So, that's it. But there is no present intent to have a ruthless scissor man in terms of the personnel. What we are doing, though, is making sure that we don't grow anymore and have a better deployment, where we even have done some reviews which suggest that we're overstaffed. You're using attrition, you're using termination, you're using resignation, and you're also looking across government to see what the skill sets are and whether you can transfer people. Obviously, it requires discussion also at the union leadership with the BPSU, where we are talking about BPSU officers, but I think most people are keen for the public sector employees to be seen to doing their part, especially in an environment where in the private sector we have become almost acclimatized to the fact that there are redundancies. And I think that part of the process is even just having the discussion. It's important that we have the discussion about budgets. It's important that we understand talks about the economy. The economy isn't some disembodied entity that doesn't affect us. And people are realizing a painful reality that what happens when we don't have the tourists, when we don't have developers who are able to build hotels. I mean, one thing which we could have put in, and that's what I'm hoping will also come from the public input. One thing which could come up is that people might say, well, okay, government, you have a responsibility. What about you saying that you're going to dedicate a portion of, will be even prepared to see you increase the debt ceiling if you're going to dedicate it not to spending on operating expenditure in current account, but saying that we want to see you spur some hotel development. We want to see you spur something, so we are prepared because we see 4 years down the horizon there will be increased revenue coming into the country, so we're prepared to take that step and support that. And those are the types of discussions that I want people to be spurred to have in terms of their living rooms and at town hall meetings and by commentators like yourselves, because I think that's how that's part of the educative process. And too often people think finance is something which is beyond them. It isn't. It really touches them in real ways. And even in terms of the issue of the local debt market, we have people here, and I think what I want to see people also be looking at, where we don't have all the resources, as part of the 60-40 discussion. Let's talk about joint venturing. Let's talk about getting some win-wins for Bermuda and Bermuda business, and it may require partnering. That's even in terms of our local designers. There was a fashion show held a couple of weeks ago. I was so excited that one of our local retail outlets signed up some of those local designers to have in their store. Now they need some money and capital to be able to show abroad, to be able to do certain things, and there's no reason why we can't have those discussions. Somebody might say, if I were an entrepreneur, I would pull down this. I would contact people in the business world who can explain where they have some confusion or don't understand. Call Mr. Manders, call Senator Brett, call anyone, and say, what does this mean for me? And what do you think about these policy options? But I don't like these policy options. Why don't we also talk about some other policy options that maybe we can get the government to think about? It's where I don't want to mislead you. We're working and have been working from, God knows, from the time we delivered the budget this year in terms of budget 2012. But it isn't crystallized as yet, and I would love to hear people's views.
One last question. One of your other fixed costs is that awful creature debt service cost. Do you see that still rising? You're indicating that it will rise in this fund. What about the next year?
I think multi-year. I think the recommendations or the pundits think that we're going to increase expenditure before they see it decrease. I am defying the pundits, And I want to see what we can do to contain. Unfortunately, some of our, I was hoping that we could use some of our sinking fund to pay off some of our notes, but they aren't coming of age until 2014. And I was hoping that there was something that was coming up in 2000, where 2000 will be 2012, and it is really the benefits are overshadowed by the burdens. It makes no sense to pay off. You can pay off earlier without suffering a penalty. But I think that in the main thing that we've said is that we're going to keep to a tight line in terms of no additional expenditures, in terms of increased expenditures, where we are between a rock and a hard place. As the Assistant Financial Secretary, and I keep saying assistant, the Acting Financial Secretary has gone grayer over the last year, and he was a young man when I first met him. But I think it's the issue that we have certain fixed items that we cannot deviate from. And the fact is that you just can't, and no matter how much we can say, we cannot deviate from our certain expenditures that we have. And the question is, how can we look at recasting the context by looking at it from a multi-year prism, and also looking at efficiency savings. But certain things we are very tightly circumscribed, because we don't have a lot of flexibility. So we've got to use the tools we have and our toolkit to see how we can make it a little better in terms of giving us a little bit more wriggle room for going forward with some of the decisions, and still helping people, because it's easy to say, let's reduce the expenditure and go down to 800 million, but that would mean making 1,000 civil servants redundant. That's unacceptable, and it's just impossible for us to consider that from a realistic common sense perspective in this environment. All we're doing is sending people into a tailspin. We are going to be increasing financial assistance, and we certainly will be turning up the volume and the heat in terms of the level of discontent and unrest. And it would be, it would be counterproductive, cyclical and counterproductive. So people who are ill-informed and underinformed can say that, but it makes no sense. Makes no sense.